Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. My husband and I are trying to get the Summit County has this fall hiking spree,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't get them all done.
Oh,
It goes till November 30th. And because of my surgery and being on vacation and stuff, we just didn't get them done. So we've done 2 hikes a day for the last 2 days, and we have 2 more to do.
wow.
So we're out in that 20-degree weather.
Oh gosh, it's really cold, and the wind. Oh my God,
Yeah.
the wind chill down here today was like 6 degrees. It's just awful.
Yeah. So we're going to go on a hike as soon as I get done with this.
Cool. I'm just bringing up some information here so I have it handy. Oh, well, besides the weather, how's everybody doing?
Very well, thank you.
We're taking advantage of turkey sales to stock up for the dogs. So, but in order to store it, I had to cook a couple of them down, right away. so, so that's what we did this morning. We cut up a turkey and cooked it. I'll give everybody a few more minutes just in case we get a couple extra people. How does everybody like their barn box yarn?
I'm very happy with it. I don't know what I'm going to do though.
I can't decide either.
It's so interesting because I knit the scarf and hat with it, and I expected it to feel bulkier than it does. It doesn't really feel so much more bulky than the DK stone soup, but it's very velvety. I love it. And it definitely knits to a different gauge and everything. But then I knit the hat in the Targhee worsted, and it was very much different, so it's interesting that way. And I'll show you that in a little bit. I couldn't find the samples of our chain and chain of fool. I don't know where they are. The photographer must have them because they're just not anywhere here. But I've got the lovely pedal pusher cardigan here, which I can put on later if you want to see it on. It's so nice in this yarn. I like it better in this yarn than the original, which was Kent worsted. No, it was confection worsted. So that's a really nice, raglan, all in one piece, no seams. It's a nice, and if you haven't seen it yet, the video of Barb wearing it while riding a bike is really cute.
Where is that video available?
On our YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
It's one of our old videos that David used to make just for fun, these little film clips with music and everything. And he set it to Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And I filmed it, and I remember, and it was in the summer that the sweater was finished, and our neighbors were just having a laugh of me running up and down the street with my camera behind Barb and in front of Barb, like filming her on the bike, and it's super cute. Anyway. All right, well, we've got 24 people now. I think we can get started. So first of all, the yarn is one of our all-time favorites, Stone Soup, only now in the worsted weight. which was when Kaya was still here last year. She was like, I really think we should do the stone soup and worsted weight. I think that would be a great addition to our yarn lines. Um, and so we dove in and took a chance on it at the time. And, you know, traditionally we hadn't been selling a lot of worsted weight. The worsteds that we had, you know, they moved more slowly than our other yarns. But lately, I'm really glad we did it, because this year there was a huge uptick in our sales of worsted weight yarn. And at Rhinebeck, that first morning, I'll just never forget, like, people were there right when the booth opened at 9, and they went immediately to the worsted weight section. And we were refilling those cubbies like every half hour, because people were just snatching up worsted weight yarn, which is so interesting. I mean, we went through kind of like a generation of knitters who didn't want anything that heavy and, you know, kind of avoided it. And now I don't know if it's because people are keeping the temperature down in their houses, or they want things that are quicker to knit, or what the reason might be, but we're just seeing a lot more interest in worsted weight yarn. And it is really fun to work with. I don't work with it a lot because the heavier fabrics are not as, you know, I wouldn't wear them as often, but when I knit with it, it's a lot of fun because it goes quickly, and, you know, 6 rows and you've got an inch knit on. It's just kind of fun compared to fingering weight or sport weight, which are kind of my favorites. And for those who haven't heard it before, and there are many people here who've been with us a long time, all the way back to the very first Stone Soup yarn, which was a fingering weight that we did first, I believe. Is that right, Jose? Yeah. Right? Yes. Stone Soup, our Stone Soup blend is very special. It's got a lot of different fibers in it, which we can name. You know, many commercial yarns also have lots of different fibers. They are often spun of a generic mix of all kinds of wool from a wool pool, but a company can't necessarily name the fibers that are in the yarn because they don't know. But we work with a mill that produces this blend for us, and they know what's in it. So the way that we started our Stone Soup blend was that when we were in the second year of our Bare Naked Wools Club, which goes back quite a ways, 2013. So Stone Soup is almost 10 years old. That's just incredible. The mill that we work with was telling us about this pile of kind of leftover wools that they had. You know, everything in the pile was identifiable and very good quality, but left over from long runs of yarn, and the leftovers were too small to really do anything with. And it was, you know, really nice Rambouillet merino. It was a selection of long wools, and then a small percentage of luxury fibers, which at the time they had a little bit of everything: bison, llama down, yak, you know, some silk noil, and we were just chatting them up at TNNA, and I was like, well, you know, oh, and they had a sample of, you know, they had spun some yarn from it. And I just took one look at this yarn and I was like, we'll take it. And they were like, well, how many skeins do you want? And I was like, we'll take all of it. Because they had a pile of like 300 pounds of fiber, which translates to about 600 skeins of yarn. I'm like, I have the perfect outlet for it. We'll put it in our club, and everyone will love it. And so they spun it up. It was kind of an unknown quantity because they had never done a blend with so many different things in it, and we had, you know, we just didn't know what the outcome would be. But I have just loved it from the first time I knit with it. It's it's got about 60 to 80%, no, not 80. It's got 80% wool, and of that 80% wool, 60% is high quality Rambouillet wool that's produced in the Western US, on the Western US range. And then it has about, let me think now. It had, of the wool, 40% of the wool, I'm sorry, yeah, 40% of the wool is long wools that are rare and heritage breed fibers. So there's Lincoln long wool in there, some Churro, some Columbia as well. So 4 different types of wool make up 80% of the yarn. And then there's 15% alpaca from, the southwestern and the western Midwest, places like that. And then there's a 5% combination of luxury fibers, so which includes silk noil, bison. And when I say bison, it's not the thick, hairy part of the bison, it's the underdown, the downy part, the llama down, a little bit of tencel in there. And that's sort of like whatever they have makes up that 5%. And it's interesting because they did a batch for us that didn't have the bison in it. And it just, you could tell the difference. Now, of that 5%, maybe a quarter of it is bison. So you're talking about like an overall 2% contribution by the bison, but it definitely makes a difference in how velvety the yarn feels. So I find that really interesting about blending fibers, that, and we've done this with other blends as well, that as little as, 1.5 or 2% of something can have a big impact on how the yarn feels and to some extent how it behaves. So I knit with this yarn and really liked it, but then I wore it and I really liked it. The yarn is spun in a semi-worsted 2-ply construction. It is, when you blend fibers, and in most of our yarns are blends of 2 or maybe 3 fibers, but this is more or less a 9 or 10 fiber blend. When you blend fibers, what happens in yarn is that the yarn takes advantage of all the strengths in each of those fibers, and the blending diminishes their drawbacks. So they both counteract each other and support each other in the blend. And so in this blend, you have short, fluffy, bouncy fibers in the merino, and then you have the strength and the silkiness of the long wools and the sturdiness. So long wools typically are sturdier. And then you have the softness and the drape from the luxury fibers. And all of those things together make for a yarn that is very sturdy, very soft. The appearance of it in photos really belies how soft and wearable this yarn is. And then it's very breathable because of the 2-ply construction. It's got a lot of air in it, so it draws moisture and heat away from your body when it's hot, but it helps to encapsulate it when it's cold, and it's just very, very comfortable fiber to wear. It doesn't pill. The first year that you knit a sweater with it, you might have a few pills under the arm that easily brush off. And then after that, it's like, it wears like iron. It is super durable. It comes in 5 different shades. So the shades are made by blending more and less of the heritage wools that are in it, the long wools, the Lincoln, the Churro, and the Rambouillet Merino are breeds that offer a wide range of colors, each one of them. And so the color can be manipulated by using more or less of the colored fleece with the white, which would be like the Columbia would be white. And even the luxury fibers, llama and bison, they have some color to them. So it's with Stone Soup, it's 5 shades of the same color, basically. So it's kind of a gradient range, as opposed to our Kent line, which is, we have, I think, 10 or 11 colors now, and they really range from in all different tones. So the Kent colors can range from light to dark in both warm and cool palettes. But the Stone Soup is one palette of light to dark. Let's see, what else can I tell you about this in terms of fiber? There was something I was going to say. The 2-ply construction is really interesting. The mill kind of dictates, they kind of dictated in the beginning how it would be spun, and I liked what they were doing, so we just stuck with that. But the fingering weight of Stone Soup is spun a little firmer and tighter than the DK and worsted weights, which are a little more relaxed and looser, and so they give you a little bit more of that velvety feeling in the finished fabric. The fingering weight is tighter and a little sturdier, which you kind of want that in a fingering weight if you're going to make garments with it. And honestly, it doesn't, the change in twist doesn't take away from the, the high quality feel of the yarn in any way. But I do so appreciate the sturdiness of it, because it knits up into fabrics. The fingering weight knits up into fabrics that you can almost see through. They are very light. And so I appreciate having that extra little twist that gives it, a little bit more durability. I've been knitting with and wearing our Stone Soup blend now, like I said, for just about 10 years. And I have no complaints. Except maybe I wish it came in more colors, but it's everything I've knit with it still looks honestly like the day I made it. It's so durable and so beautiful over time. It blooms a lot when you wash it the first time, but garments and accessories knit with this yarn bloom a little more every time you wash them for about 3 washes. And then finally, after like a 3rd wash, you get kind of the final fabric, which is very cohesive, a little bit fuzzy, with a flannelly surface to it. And you might not see that until, like I said, you wash it a few times. Let's see, something came to my head just now about it. Anyway, it is, oh, I know what it was. This is one of the yarns that you can knit on a really wide range of needle sizes. So it blooms a lot. If you knit it very loosely, like on a size, for the worsted weight, like on a size 9 or 10 needle, it might seem very loose and unstructured when you're knitting it. And then when you wash it, the yarn literally explodes to fill up those spaces and to stick together, let the fibers stick together a little bit and to become very even and cohesive. And the same thing with the very lightweight version as well, which is why I appreciate, again, the way that they spin it being so durable, is that you get this really what feels like almost a flimsy fabric, but then when it blooms, it becomes the structure that you expect from a sturdy yarn. Let's see. So in terms of the wool breeds that are in this, the Rambouillet breed is it's a merino. It's Rambouillet and other sheep are like this. So merino is a family of different, sub species. There there's the Saxa Merino, which is the merino sheep that kind of the original line of merino sheep that came from Africa to Spain and were sequestered in Spain for a couple centuries and developed and bred there as a European breed. And then when the stronghold on that breed kind of began to loosen and crack, a large contingent of those Saxa Merinos were brought to France, where they were raised and bred slightly differently to the point where they became their own kind of subspecies. So the Rambouillet Merino has a longer, larger body because it was bred to be not just a sheep with a focus on the wool, but for meat production as well. So it has a bigger, heavier, more square body, and without sacrificing, and they were able to breed that way without sacrificing the quality of the wool. So in terms of the softness and the bounciness and the hand feel of the fleece, it doesn't differ that much from the Saxon Merino. But, obviously with a bigger sheep with a dual purpose, you might get a slightly larger diameter with some of the fleeces in the wool. But in terms of durability, the fleece is also the staple length is very slightly longer with the Rambouillet Merino. And they produce a larger fleece, so there's a little bit more of it. So that's where the merino component comes from. Lincoln Longwool is an old heritage breed, a British breed that can grow a fleece that touches the ground. It can grow locks that are 1.5 to 2 feet long even. And some people like to use those very long clips for hand spinning. You can't run fleece that long through mill equipment. It has to be the staple length for milling yarn needs to be 6 inches or less, preferably more like 5. So the Lincoln that's used in this type of blend is shorn more times per year. If you shear Lincoln sheep once a year, you'll get that really long fleece. And if you shear them 2 or even 3 times a year, you'll get a shorter fleece. And many growers who work consistently with a source that buys their wool can even shear their sheep on a schedule that meets the criteria of the mill and the buyer. So that's kind of interesting. Lincoln Longwool is a rare breed, and at one time, not too long ago, it was actually an endangered breed. There is a farm in California that has the largest number of Lincoln Longwool sheep on the planet, actually. So at the time that I wrote the ebook about the ebook chapter about our stone soup yarn, there were around 2,000 Lincoln Longwool sheep in the world. And the person in California, the woman that runs the Lincoln farm there, had, I think, 1,200 of them at the time. So that's the size of her flock in proportion to the total global population was really big. And that's where we got that really, really dark fiber. So the River Rock shade, let me get some of the other colors here. Hang on 1 second. I should have done this. So this is the darkest shade of the Stone Soup blend. It's really like a blue, black, brown color. Oh, you're knitting with it. Yay. This is the River Rock shade. It's the colors in it, the colors that make it that really charcoal brown are the Lincoln and Churro are really contributing that. Merino can produce a fleece that's really dark like this, but it's a little more chocolatey, I think, than this. And we do use some of that dark merino, but most of this really dark color is coming from the Lincoln fiber. In fact, at one point we did do a yarn. We did a lace yarn with the Lincoln fiber and a little bit of the Rambouillet in it that was really, really dark. We called it Mrs. Lincoln's Lace, and it was even darker brown than this. It was really nice. We couldn't get it after a while though. So that's the Lincoln long wool. It's the Lincoln is a breed, and I've talked about this many times at Barn Box, but Lincoln is a breed that is often crossed with other sheep breeds to improve the genetics of a breed and to create new breeds, because its genetics are both very assertive. They will take over kind of the genetic profile, and very good. You know, they have a lot of great characteristics. They're super hardy. They're not weak sheep in any way, and they produce a lovely fleece. So the Lincoln is often used in creating new sheep. So it's kind of interesting that we can also use it for the same exact reasons in blending new blends of wool fibers for yarns. The other shades of while I'm on the topic of the colors, the other shades of the Stone Soup, I'm going to show them to you. I hope I can do this in order from dark to light. So the lightest shade is Marble, and then there's the Pumice. The Granite is the middle shade. The Slate, which is what you guys have gotten in your Barn Box, and then the River Rock. And at one time we had an oddball shade called Travertine that very few people had got some of. It was kind of it didn't belong in the gradient, but it was kind of a travertine. It had some more wool in it that was it was an unreliable source. So in terms of being able to get, that color consistently, so we had to take it out of our line. Okay, so the other really interesting heritage wool that's in this blend is the Churro. Churro is the first domestic livestock breed to be developed in North America. It's very hardy and adaptable. You tend to see most Churro flocks and herds are raised in the American Southwest and over the border in Mexico, California, in the kind of hot, dry areas of the country. Although it is a long wool and would thrive in a colder climate, it's for some reason it's kind of settled in that area of our country, and that's where lots of it is sourced from. And if you travel to that area, if you've had the good fortune to travel to New Mexico or Texas or even parts of Colorado, where first people have co-ops, where they weave rugs and make yarns and household goods, blankets and things like that. The Churro breed is used in a lot of those Native American goods. So for weaving, it's incredibly strong fiber. It comes in a lot of different shades. and some of it even has a blue or a green cast to the fiber. So it lends really rich natural colors to yarns and woven goods. And at the same time, really interesting base colors to dye on top of. So it is really popular for that purpose. It does tend to be a rug quality, a rug grade of fiber. It's very coarse and stiff and not necessarily next to the skin soft, although you can secure supplies of it that are much softer and and usable for a knitting yarn. It's again, the sources are just not, the supply isn't reliable. I shouldn't say the sources are unreliable, but the supply is not reliable. It's just not always available that way. In fact, our mill gets it and uses it in blends, but when we asked them about doing a churro yarn, they were like, oh, we can't get that much of it. That just, we wouldn't be able to do that. Churro is a milk sheep. They produce a lot of milk for, for their offspring. And so they're able to be raised in places where they don't need a lot of human attention, or they wouldn't get a lot of human attention. They can raise their young out on the range and do just fine that way. Let's see. They are a dual coated sheep. And so that's why it produces a kind of silky, a little bit more wiry, long wool outer coat. And then the underdown, or the undercoat, is the really soft stuff that is very difficult to procure. Because if you know anything about double coated animals, whether it's a dog or a sheep or a goat, they tend to lose their undercoat when they're out and about, So lots of times, if you don't catch them at just the right moment where you can comb out that really soft fiber, it ends up, flying around the fields and getting stuck on fences and shrubbery and made into birds' nests and blowing away, So that's why the supply can be really unreliable. It's the same thing with bison and yak and all of those kind of bovines that produce that undercoat. If you don't catch them at the right time, bringing them all in for inoculation right at the right time, you kind of lose your seasonal crop of undercoat to nature. Let's see. So those are kind of the three important heritage wools that are in the yarn. This is a tweed yarn that has visible speckles and neps that are created in the fiber blend. So whereas we have in the Targhee Tango line, that is also a fairly tweedy yarn with speckles, that is just part of the inconsistency of blending of the fiber. But in the case of the stone soup, it's part of the recipe to put in small amounts of silk noil and tangled bits of tencel and luxury fiber that are intentionally mixed in a color that doesn't match the base. So for instance, in this, I knit this with the pumice color, and you can see these little white and black speckles throughout. Those are actually little tiny balls. They're called noils of silk that are created in the combing process. When the combs rake through the fiber, little bits of fiber get twisted around the comb, and it creates a little curl or a little ball that's called a noil. And with silk, you also sometimes get fibers that are just naturally stuck together with the sericin from the caterpillar that creates the fiber. It's like a protein compound that glues together some of the fibers and causes tangling, and all of that stuff is combed out and saved aside. Instead of thrown out, they make neps with it for tweed yarns. Tweed yarn, the final fiber blend for a tweed yarn cannot be combed. So tweeds are always going to be a woolen spun or a semi-worsted spun construction, because if you comb them to make a worsted construction, you'll comb out all of the little bits that you're intending to keep. So that's why the tweedy look usually is that speckly kind of appearance. It kind of indicates a I don't want to say a lack of refinement, but a choice not to refine the fiber more, to keep it in that state. One of the nice things about tweedy woolly yarns like that is that by keeping the fibers kind of loose and tangled and not combed and straight, they are airier and fluffier and loftier and softer to knit with. And they also breathe better once you make them into a fabric. We named the yarn Stone Soup because of the old fable about, throwing one thing in a pot and then adding everybody in a community, adding a little bit of whatever they could spare or whatever they had into the pot to make a really delicious, wonderful soup that could be shared with everyone. And so we felt that the idea behind the yarn kind of went really well with that name. So that's where that came from. Any questions, you guys? You're all so quiet. Well, you're all quiet because you're muted, right?
And I'm wondering, how did the Lincoln breed get its name?
I don't really know. Probably because Lincolnshire, in Lincolnshire, England, it maybe is, kind of a hot spot for a Lincoln sheep originally. I would suspect it has to do, most of those British breeds, the names kind of come from where they originate from, kind of geographically. Sally?
Yeah, where is your mill? And do you go there often?
No, we don't go to that. I've never been to that mill. It's out west, so it's a little bit far. I've always wanted to go out there. And I'm going to tell you a story about the mill in a minute. It's in Wyoming, so it's right in the middle of, where lots of really large sheep operations are. In previous months, we talked about sheep stations in Australia that run like thousands of head of sheep. It's kind of like that out there, where how like Montana is really empty. But we say it's really empty, but it's really full of sheep and cows. Or I should say cattle and other, commodity producing animals. Even they run bison and stuff like that out there too. So one of the interesting things about the Rambouillet sheep, getting back to them, is that many of the ranches, the big ranches out west that produce Rambouillet sheep, meat, and wool products are run by families who have their origins in the Basque country of France and Spain. So Basque land is a region that sits on the border between France and Spain in the Great Pyrenees Mountains. So the people there have a very unique, they have a totally unique language. It's not rooted in any other language that they've maintained, that they've managed to maintain. And they have very unique and singular kind of traditions in their farming and domestic life and crafts and all kinds of things. It's, I assume that's originally because of the isolation of where they're located. But when you think about the rest of the world blending and taking up traditions from all kinds of other places, it is really interesting that this population of people kind of maintain a very unique language and lifestyle. That said, during the gold rush in the 1840s and 50s, many of them came to America and the West Coast seeking to build a fortune in gold. And when they got there and it didn't pan out, they just went to work. They just looked around and saw all that land out there, and they got to work building sheep operations. And they brought their unique herding and husbandry processes with them. So if you travel through the area, and you'll see these very traditionally dressed Basque farmers, tending their sheep, and they even still wear like the traditional clothing. Sometimes they have, for instance, they make these huge clogs out of felted wool, like waste wool, and they put them over their boots to wear in the fields. I guess maybe it makes it easier to walk in the mud, or I don't know what. But that's like an example of something that is very unique to them. Their breeding programs are traditional to their own people. They maintain, I imagine, I've never been to one of these sheep ranches, but I imagine they maintain their language amongst themselves as well, just because, having been around other groups of kind of ethnocentric groups in my life, I know that people feel comfortable speaking their own language amongst themselves. If like me, you grow up in a big Italian family, you're going to hear a lot of Italian language all your life, or like me, you lived for many years in Latin-based neighborhoods, Latin American-based neighborhoods in New York. Even a very small neighborhood within a Latin neighborhood can speak like, Panamanian or Dominican or Puerto Rican or Creole. Like there's just so many different versions of that language, and people like to live with people who speak their own language. Even to this day, there's a nostalgic, traditional desire to carry on those ethnic traditions within a community. And through from in the 1800s, this goes back to some earlier Barmbach discussions that we've had, but from the middle of the 1800s through the very early 1900s, there was a huge boom in the wool industry. Farmers couldn't produce enough wool to meet the demand of a growing urban population. And so, we have always imported a lot of wool from Australia and Great Britain, but as we pushed westward in our own country, and people discovered that they could, pioneer tracts of land out west and develop large herds of sheep for wool production, it has been an American industry that has thrived. And even after the kind of catapult downwards of the wool industry after the 1920s, we still do produce a lot of wool in this country, and most of it is produced out west on these large tracts of land. But because the demand for wool, kind of it rises and falls very little. It kind of has stayed steady since the late 1960s or 1970s. Our consumption of wool has remained at about 2 to 3 pounds per capita per year, something like that. It's pretty low at this point. In fact, I think it might even be closer to like 1.5 pounds. It's pretty low. And with that, of course, these ranchers fell on harder and harder times. They have to hustle more. The production that they can, their production has to be much more meat focused rather than wool focused. And the ability to even get back on the wool, what it costs you to shear the sheep, became kind of this impossible no-win situation. And so instead of marketing wool, in the early 2000s, by that time, they were literally throwing it in the ditch by the side of the road as they sheared the sheep. It just wasn't, it just was not even worth putting it on a truck and driving it somewhere. If you remember, at that time, gas was also like $4 a gallon back in the early 2000s for a while, and so that created a real transportation problem for people that are out in the middle of nowhere. At that time, two women who knew each other from church, they were involved in like PTA and church groups together, and knew that they were interested in crafts and knitting, and they decided to start a mill to use this wool. They just couldn't bear to see it go to waste like that. And so they started the Mountain Meadow Wool Company. Let me think. It'll say on their website when they founded it, but when I met them, it was approximately 2007 or 2008. They were really just getting started in having products that they could market wholesale to yarn shops. And they started with a line of their Rambouillet merino, just the pure merino. And that was the Mountain Meadow Wool merino was the very first yarn that we did in one of our clubs, in our Bare Naked Club. The first year that we did our club, we only made one yarn. And all of the other yarns we had to purchase. So that was the very first yarn we did. We started our whole series of chapters with merino and went from there. And it was their merino in white that we did. And they did successfully develop relationships with some of these large ranches to produce wool for their yarn and for our yarn. So our wool, our Rambouillet wool, has been coming to us from the Camino Ranch, which is one of these, as far as I know, it is one of these Basque family or mixed Basque family ranches out there. If you have the first B&K book from 2012, the ebook, and if you don't have it, ebooks are going to be on sale next Monday, not this Monday, but next Monday for Cyber Monday. The very first chapter of the 2012 book is Merino, and you'll see some beautiful photos of the ranch and the owners and the farmers, the farmhands who herd the sheep there. And of course, the sheep themselves are very beautiful. And then you'll get to see some pictures from inside the mill and of the owners. And those owners developed the mill. They eventually got more products in their own lines, and started making yarn for more people. But they have always made yarn for us too. We really love working with them. And in the meantime, a few years ago, one of the women left the company, and the remaining founder brought more of her family in to run the mill. So now it's she's the owner. Her son runs he's the mill operator, the chief mill operator. I think her daughter-in-law designs products for the mill. They have now a knitting mill that they make knitted products and ready-made. They produce yarn and have blankets woven off-site, so they sell those. It's just a really nice family business, and it's the kind of business that we really like to work with. They are highly committed to sourcing wool very close by and from ranches that from people that they've known for a long time and whose quality they respect. They're not the kind of they don't just work with just anybody just to get some fiber, which I really like about them. They really want to work with the people that they've committed to. They've also been involved in several different grant projects. And this goes back a decade or more, that are green friendly projects. So they got a big grant back in like 2010 to develop equipment for filtering wastewater from the wool washing process to turn into gray water for watering the land, and also to recycle water within the mill itself. So they actually had equipment created and made for this process, which just saves a ton of energy and a ton of water in an area that is really dry and really, and so, that was a decade ago. I mean, we're talking a lot now about how the Colorado River is drying up, but they were working on amending their use of water way back when no one else was really doing it. So I've always really appreciated the kinds of approaches that they use, the way that they approach being in business, using resources, creating a community, are all kind of things that their approaches are approaches I hope that we are also carrying out on our end. And it's a really good example of how we like to work with our mills and our sources. I like everybody in the circle to be kind of on the same page, and it just feels good to know for sure that they are. All right. Any questions about the yarn, making the yarn, or anything like that before we kind of move on to the design work?
I have
Wow,
a
yeah.
question. I have a
Okay.
question. I may have asked you this before, but in hand spinning, combining longer fibers and shorter fibers is not so easy. How do they manage that in the commercial milling? And, so how do those because you talked about stone soup doesn't pill, but you've got these short little fibers. Do they stick more because you wash it and they bloom?
I think so. Well, first of all, I think that when they are purchasing the fiber to spin, they're not purchasing fiber that with a great length, different lengths. So they're not purchasing like long locks of Lincoln. They're purchasing Lincoln that's sheared to be the same length as the merino. And like I said, these these farms that produce long wool can shear on a schedule that matches the merino shearing schedule. And we've been told that not just by them, but we've been told that over and over with different sheep breeds. They're happy to, and mohair as well. They're happy to shear on a schedule that suits our production. And it's really, they have so much flexibility with the long wool that they can do that. But still there is a difference when you're spinning thinner fibers with coarser fibers. You can run into some of the same issues, like if you have too much difference between the short fine fiber and the long coarse fiber, the coarse fibers will tend to gravitate toward the center of the yarn and gather the short fibers around them like almost like a core spun yarn. And in that case, that would pill more easily. So the mill is really balancing as much as they can. They're getting the finer type of long wool, the finest and best quality that they can. And in terms of the merino, they're probably, since they're not going to comb it anyway, they're probably using like not the very finest merino, but something more like a 19 micron or 20 micron instead of a 17, or even
fine.
Yeah, or even like a 21 or 22, there's within merino, there's different grades that way. And I'm all for using the stronger merino over the weaker, not weaker, but the finer merino in a blend like this. It's not going to be the feature fiber. It is the feature fiber. I shouldn't say it that way, but you're already taking you're knocking a little bit off of it by blending it with something anyway. So it doesn't have to be the most supreme fine merino for my purposes. And we're making use of a commodity that isn't as desirable or expensive, or we're kind of making use of something that there's a lot of.
Right. How do they integrate the down fibers? Because aren't they a little shorter as well?
Yeah, I think just with everything, like you said, when it blooms, well, first of all, that's a really tiny percentage.
Okay.
And I think that can be gathered up with the merino pretty successfully. So they are blending it all before they spin it.
Right. Of course.
And maybe blending it even a little bit better than some of the hand spinning blends you might come across. But it's something of a science, and the mill manager has to be really careful about how he's calibrating the equipment for that and running samples. And
even how they layer the fibers in the
Mhm.
beginning of the process.
Yeah, and the thing about the semi-worsted production is that you are drafting it a couple more times and in a thinner way, and so you're blending it even more then during that part of the process. So it does get blended really well. I have to say, like, this isn't a fiber when you look at it that you can identify individual fibers like you can with some of our other blends. You can really do that, but with this, it's very cohesive. When you pull apart that yarn, it's not immediately apparent what's what in there.
Mhm. Thanks, that was interesting. And I
I hope that
apologize
makes-
if I asked you that
yeah,
before.
No, you haven't, and I hope that makes sense.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm not there and I don't know everything about everything, but um, I have actually asked that question before because on reading about blending fibers, it came up for me too. And I had a conversation with the mill owner some years ago about all that. And she's like, well, that's what you're paying the big bucks for. Basically, you're paying us to be knowledgeable about that and to make a really good yarn. But that said, I have used commercial yarns that were not that well thought out. And I don't have it on right. I was cooking a turkey earlier and I had this old scraggly sweater on that I made. It was the Aztec mazes that I made in this yarn that was produced by Rowan, I think. Very briefly. It was a nylon and wool blend or something. And it was so soft and nice to knit with. It made such a lightweight, nice sweater. But within a year, it was self-destructing in terms of that. And one of the reasons was just that. I just wasn't knowledgeable at the time to
Mhm.
have really thought about that yarn and what it would be good for. But those sweaters just, both David and I love the sweater, love the way they feel, but they look horrible because they're covered with these, I don't even want to say pills because they're like long, stringy, they don't hang off, or they're not like pills. They just cling to the outside of the fabric. And the nylon core starts to reveal itself after a while. It's just horrible looking, but perfectly fine for a work sweater where you're going to get it dirty anyway. So, but construction matters, just like in houses and everything else. Quality construction really matters in yarn. Audrey?
Oops, my question is, I'm looking at the worsted, and it's 2-ply, as is the fingering and as is the DK. So this may be really obvious, but the plies are just bigger.
Yes.
So each ply is a thicker ply, and they also
Yeah.
sort of look already fluffed. It looks airy, very airy.
Well, if you want to spin like a really similar yarn in different weights, so if you want to spin a 2-ply yarn in several different weights, normally you'd have to adjust the twist to do that. So with the thicker plies, they would need to be spun a little bit with a little bit less twist to ply together, to make a yarn that looks the same as the DK, but just fatter. That's why I was saying before, the fingering weight in this line is a little bit unique because the twist on that is tighter and it is noticeably, it has a noticeably slightly different appearance to it.
So the thickness is less twist in each ply.
It's more fiber in each ply and less.
Ply and
Yeah.
less. Okay.
Yeah, and less yards per ounce. So in the worsted weight, you get 230 yards in 4 ounces instead of 300 or 450 as you do in the other ones. So
Okay.
each ply is thicker, and because it's thicker, it can take less twist. And so the DK and the worsted are spun more softly and more relaxed and plied more softly as well. And so they will look a little bit fuzzier and fluffier in the skein than the fingering weight does, right off the bat. And they will also bloom more. They really explode, when they're washed. And the surface of the fabric is so it's so cohesive and flannelly. I hope you can. Let me turn it inside out.
knit with the DK and I love it. And I
Yeah.
can't wait. My second one has been on my list since I made the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the inside of the fabric where you get some blocks of stockinette there.
Yeah.
They're just really nice and fluffy and cozy. It's very squishy.
I know you make it very hard to finish one project before I start.
So I did test this yarn out with all kinds of different stitch patterns. And I just as with the other one, I love it in everything, but I chose to do a design with cables as the new design because the cables have such soft depth to them. They're only 2x2 cables. They're not like thicker than normal or anything, but they really pop off the background. They're on a background of reverse stockinette. They really stand proud of the background like you want cables to do. And there's a lot of depth, but it's a soft, very touchable depth. They're not stiff at all. I mean, this hat, for instance, you can even see in the photos, it's very drapey and floppy. It'll fall into a soft little plop at the top of your head. And the scarf is just really wonderful. It's a nice big long scarf. Now I use 2 skeins and a little bit of a third skein to make this, but you could get a really decently long scarf with 2 skeins. I think it might be like 6 or 8 inches less, but just look at that. And it's not only soft and squishy and really wearable next to the skin, but it lays so nice and flat. It's got such a crisp shape to the rectangle. You know, it doesn't curl or want to sag out of shape right away. It's just really lovely. It's a really nice scarf. Now the
I
hat,
agree with everything you're saying. It looks wonderful.
it is. It's really nice. The hat is kind of a longer stocking cap, cone shaped. You know, this is the biggest size. So when I put it on, it like literally is just I have the tiniest head, but it will fall over in a nice stocking cap. Of course, it fits David perfectly. He's got a big pumpkin head. The pattern includes this shorter straight brim with the cables all the way down like this. And then it includes a brim style that you can double back, in which this cable is worked just as a plain rib. And oh, why am I showing you? So with the double, I made a double brim sample. The rib in the brim part is just worked straight, and the instructions are all in the pattern. And that way, for those like me who like a double cap, you can get a nice little double there. And there are also instructions to shorten the cap if you like a short, tight fit. So this is the smallest size for my little pea head. And I knit this with the Targhee Tango Worsted just to see if I could get the same gauge, and I do. So this will be my new, this is my new dog walking hat. You can see. So it has a nice short, tight fit. And, you know, sometimes guys like that fit that just comes down to the top of their ears or whatever. This would be perfect. And you can make this length with the single brim as well. Totally up to you. You can mix and match how you like. So that's the hat design. And then do you want me to put the sweater on while we're all here? Okay. I have to get it off the mannequin.
And can you say the pattern? Because I came late.
It's called Pedal Pusher.
Okay, I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm wearing my Champlain in the Kent DK, my prototype. One thing that people ask me about often with these yarns is why is there so much, why are all these sticks and hay in it? Okay, let me back up this. Okay, there, how's that? So this is, it's knit all in one piece. You knit the sleeves first, then you knit the body, then you join the sleeves up and knit up to the top. So there's no seams. You do have to sew the pockets on. It has a side entry pocket like that. Very comfortable. And then, you know, you can button it all the way up to the top like that, or wear it open. You can wear the collar down like that, or even open another button like that. I'm just gonna sit down. And I don't know if Sherry's here. She actually knit this sample for us.
And is that a black shirt you're wearing underneath it?
It's charcoal gray.
Charcoal gray, because
Yeah.
it highlights the brownish nature of that
Yeah.
yarn. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a blue gray, like a gray. So, yep, it kind of where this, and this is the slate color that you guys got. So this has the cable in this is a little, it has a little texture inside the cable. It's fun to knit and quick. I'm trying to remember how many skeins this took, but I can't off the top of my head. Anyway, a really fun knit. But back to the pieces of grass and stuff that are in this. It's called vegetable matter. It's because of the merino fiber. Merino is a really sticky, greasy fleece, and these animals are raised on the range. So they're raised outside, and you know, they roam the tall grasses in the summer, and their fleece catches a lot of stuff on it, including even little sticks and stuff. And most commercial yarns are made using a lot, the production employs a lot of chemicals to get rid of things like vegetable matter. So the fiber is like drowned in a bath of chemicals that will dissolve the grass and sticks and things like that. And we don't do any of that. So that's why some of that is still clinging to your yarn. Most of it is going to fall off as you knit with it, and you'll even, you know, you might even see it in your lap or gather piles of it in your chair. But and then a lot more of it is also going to come off in the first couple of washings. Whatever ends up remaining in the yarn will soften quite a bit with a hot wash, and it's not something that you notice, you know, when you're wearing it or anything like that. I like to think of it as notes from the farm. I don't know, it just doesn't bother me that much, and it's
I
kind
think
of,
it's totally cool. I love
Yeah.
seeing it.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's kind of neat. You know, sometimes I'm obsessive about picking it out, and sometimes I'm not, you know, it just depends on my mood.
Exactly.
So anyway, any other questions, you guys? A few announcements then. We have Black Friday coming up, and we have some promotions. There's a special promotion coming your way. You're going to have early access to the holiday barn box. If you do want to get that as a gift for yourself or someone else, I believe you will see that on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, you'll get the regular email with the specials for the rest of the weekend. We have 20% off patterns on Friday, I think. Saturday, I'm going to forget them all now. Saturday is free shipping. Sunday, there's a free pattern. All you have to do is order it and it's free. And then Monday is Cyber Monday. We have 25% off ebooks. So there's a whole weekend full of stuff. And of course, Giving Tuesday, we're going to celebrate and promote our Red Scarf fundraiser, which we are at least at the halfway mark at this point. So I'm super hyped that we're growing our fund every day. People are really enthusiastic about it, and I'm really, really hoping we can get to that 20,000 mark by the end. And let's see what else. I can't think of anything else. I know I'm forgetting something, but I can't think of what. Also, our Red Scarf Knit Along is underway. We still have another probably like 3 or 4 weeks to go. So if you haven't signed up yet for that and you still want to join, it's worth every penny. We're having a really fun time because everyone is knitting small kind of giftable projects. We're finishing things right and left. So there's always something exciting to look at. And joining late will not prevent you from finishing something. So if life is crazy and feels like you need a break, come join us on Wednesday night and Saturday afternoon. Even if you can only come on one of those days each week, it's very, very worth it. Okay, somebody has posted a question. It popped up, but I didn't get to read it. So could you just say it? Somebody who's new to Barn Box?
Megan has asked a question
Okay.
about how to pick the pattern to go with the gorgeous skein.
You should have received an email on the 17th that gives you access to the Barn Box collection. So we pick a collection of yarns, of patterns that we feel will go really well with this yarn. Some of them are one skein projects, and some of them are projects that require more than one skein. And you can choose one of those patterns for free. I think there's 9 or 10 different patterns there, and download it. You'll have received an email with a code and all of that. If you didn't get that email, please contact Jeeves at knitspot.com and someone will help you. David will help you out with that.
Also in the Ravelry group, they can ask questions.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
we have our Ravelry group too, where everybody is. Jose is one of our moderators, and so is Ann Hutchison and Elizabeth McDonough, who's not here today, but she's also one of our moderators. I know what I forgot to say. The slate color that you received in your Barn Box is 10% off to you. The code is also in that email that you got on the 17th. So if you want more of it, if you want to make a sweater with it, you can do it at a 10% discount. And amazingly, we're already getting, I don't think we're low on the slate, but we're getting low on the other shades of it. We already put another order in, so not to worry. Yeah. Well, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you for participating and supporting and being a fan of beautiful natural fibers. I really appreciate it. And we try to be here for you as much as we can. So happy holidays. We'll see you. Oh, Amina, did you have a question? You're muted.
Sorry, it's just a comment. I'm just wanted to say I'm so excited to be back in your club. So excited.
Oh, I know. I'm
And
so
the yarn
excited
is
to
so
actually
good.
talk to you. Amina and I have communicated in email and on Ravelry for years and years. And she has knit several samples for us, and I'm so excited that I'm
Yeah.
actually talking to you.
And I was telling Jose, I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Festivus.
Is that the
very-
first one
Yeah, from 2013. So yeah.
from the first club, from the
Yeah.
Fall and Full
Wow.
Color Club?
Yeah. So it's
So
always
that
nice
yarn,
for me, yeah, to see the
yeah. So that, yeah,
red, yeah.
yeah. The progression of it. Yeah, that's a skein of our very first Festivus yarn, which was a club yarn.
Yeah.
And then the next year we sold it. We sold the leftovers as our first fundraiser yarn, and that kicked off the whole yarn thing. Very nice. Oh, you guys, whoever comes on Wednesday, I'll see you Wednesday night. And to the rest of you, happy holidays.